Welcome back to the Mountain View Natural Areas Mixed Conifer Forest. Last time we took a look at the Douglas fir and Sitka spruce. We saw their buds breaking, and the new needles and leaves popping out, the bright light green, soft new needles that come out in individual needles. Today we're going to take a little shift to our southern side of the mixed conifer forest and look at that one that everyone thinks is the conifer, is pine trees. I call this part our little piney woods. It is a stand of Ponderosa pine. Now this is the cone of the Ponderosa pine, and it's pretty much what people think of when they think of pine cones, and this one is in fact from a pine. This right here is the trunk of a Ponderosa pine, and what's unusual about it, or what's cool about it, is that it looks like a jigsaw puzzle. Like all of these pieces are like puzzle pieces, and they all come. It doesn't look quite like this when they're younger, but this one's getting there. I have no idea how old this Ponderosa pine is. Now, the Ponderosa pine of Oregon mostly are their own habitat on the eastern side of the Cascades. They like that dry land. Here, it's not so dry, it's wetter. So you start wondering, well, what do we have them here for? How did they get here? Why are they here? Now, it's possible that some of them came with those, it's hard to say how they got here. Sometimes things move around by people, sometimes by other methods. But these Ponderosa pine that we find in the Willamette Valley have actually been kind of named valley pine, or the valley Ponderosa pine, because they're a little bit more adapted to our climate and our soils. And they actually are being used on purpose and planted for lumber. So what we noticed here is on the inside of the forest, we see a lot of trunk, but we don't see a lot of needles. The needles are mostly way up high, up in the open, where they can get the sun that they need to make the food, the sugars that they send down for the whole tree to grow. The bark and the wood and the roots and the needles all need sugars to grow. So let's take a look at, now this floor of the forest. I love forest. Forest is so much more than just trees. Forest is everything. So on the floor here, underneath the pine, we have lots and lots of these bundles of old needles. So you can see here, this is, see if I can get it to focus, there's like a little packet that has, hard to see, a little packet at the bottom that holds needles together. The Ponderosa pine needles can be pretty long, and there are usually 3 in a bundle. So we have bundles of 3 needles, and these are our Ponderosa pine. Now I'm going to take us on just a quick little jaunt and see if we can look at some Ponderosa pine from the sunny side, where they have their needles showing, because it's on a side that's on the edge, the inner edge, where they can get more sun, so they put more of their needles out there. They're not going to send branches with needles out into the darkness. Well, they'll try. They'll send them into the darkness, but they won't do well. The needles won't get much food, and the branches will die, and that's when you end up with all of these just snaggly, snarly branches that tried to grow in the dark. And so they don't do so well. But the branches that are out in the light, they will keep going. And we will see, now see this flagging ahead? That's marking off poison oak. So if you're out in the natural area and you see pink flagging like that, poison oak. So now we're out in the open, and on the edge, these are some Douglas fir. And you can see again there, like we saw yesterday, the bud break. There's all kinds of things in our forest. It's not just one tree or another tree. We also have hawthorn trees and wild cherry trees. There are grasses down in there, snowberry. A forest is it's a whole community that is really more than, they call it more than the sum of its parts. So we're doing some walking today. That's all right. I hope you're enjoying the little view. Because right around this corner, actually I'm going to pan, don't get seasick, over here looking farther south, these are some of the Ponderosa Pine. They're pretty big, that form the edge between our natural area and the farmers' fields. And over here on the inside, and they're kind of intermingling with wild cherry, but here are the Ponderosa Pine, and these are their brand new little babies. So here are last year's needles that are still alive. They spent all winter, they don't lose their leaves, they spent all winter gathering sun on the sunny days, because there's plenty of sunny days, and even when it's cloudy there's ultraviolet radiation, and there is energy to be had. So all winter long they continue, all these green needles continued to gather solar energy and turn it into sugar, but probably much more slowly. Now that it is spring, the buds that were down in here are breaking, bud break, and these are the new sweet little needles popping out. And you can see they're still in bundles of 3, but they're short. But they will be growing all spring and summer long until each one of them is as long as these other ones. So here we are. We've seen Douglas fir and Sitka spruce, 2 super important conifers of Oregon, and now we've also seen the Ponderosa pine. What you see here, this isn't a cone. This is producing pollen. The cone is when is the seed holder. This produces pollen that will help, it has to pollinate and then create the seeds that are held inside of the cones. And the cones are cool. Ponderosa pine is one of those trees that, those cones are pretty sturdy, and they're pretty fire resistant. So there's just so much to learn about these conifers. So I encourage you to go look, find more, because conifers are cool. All right, have a great day. It's been fun being out here on a beautiful day with the conifers, the pines.